There you go.
And during his, tight end camp.
Thank you, Twitter.
Yeah, thank you, Twitter. But again, not taking too much stake in that.
But he's exciting. He got hurt. I feel like you probably have it maybe in front of you, but he got hurt. I feel like earlier in the year, and he's another guy where he would be huge to get back. I mean, everyone at this point is huge to get back, but I mean, he was such a target for Aaron for a while there, and to lose him kind of put a lot more pressure on guys like Davante Adams, right? Wideouts and backfielders. So to get him back and have a go-to guy at the tight end position would be exciting. So another guy that we hope to see sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a guy who had almost 600 yards receiving and 11 touchdowns in 2020. That is some serious production, and hopefully we can get some of that back this year. Obviously we lost a couple of guys in the offseason to free agency, Davante Adams and MVS. Packers traded up actually in the second round to draft Christian Watson from NDSU, who is also on the PUP list to begin training camp. Apparently he had a quote unquote minor knee surgery in June. I don't know. What are we worried about this, or does it not really matter at this point because he hasn't done anything anyway? He's a rookie, and expectations should be low for rookies, or what do you think?
I think big picture, not a big deal. It's to your point, the reports all sound minor. The NFL and teams always make things sound minor, I feel like, until they can't anymore. So as we get closer to actually week 1, I think we'll know more about that. But yeah, to your point, he hasn't done anything in the NFL yet. I mean, for all we know, he could be like Amari Rodgers where, even at healthy, he's got, 8 receptions on the year. I just made that up, but, a number like that. I think, with the amount of time he's been a Green Bay Packer, and us losing Davante and us all wanting to move up and getting 2 or 3 first-round wide receivers, and it's okay, we went to like the first pick in the second round, and this guy's really, really good, and by the way, now he's hurt with a minor knee surgery. If that's the only context you're giving me, then yeah, it's a really big deal. Think about that. If we knew this guy needed surgery before draft night, would any of us wanted, for better or for worse, right? As fans, would any of us wanted him to be selected where he was? Probably not. So I think it's a huge deal, like in that context. Overall, hopefully it's something small and he ends up being, a typical rookie receiver where maybe he's got some targets from a guy like Rodgers where you need a lot of trust. Probably not the end of the world for, I don't think it's the difference, this surgery, between going to a Super Bowl or not. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, for sure. One other notable receiver on the injury list was actually the NFI, the non-football injury list, was Sammy Watkins, who we signed in free agency and added to our wide receiving core. But then it was reported, too, that it was a minor hamstring issue. They didn't use the word injury. They said issue. He was back to practice on Friday. No update on him as far as, he's been fine or if there's been any additional issues. But I just thought it was worth noting. He's had injury issues the past couple of years. And, I think.
Yeah, and you just hit it right there. Sammy Watkins, as soon as we signed him, I was like fist pumping, and maybe I was just kind of, the name got me excited. But like the further away we've gotten from acquiring him, still super excited, still need him, right? Still love the name. It's just in my heart gotten less exciting, I guess. I don't know. I mean, how do you feel? I mean, do you feel like he's going to be a day one, injury aside? Let's assume he's not hurt, right? And he's actually playing. Do you see him as like making a huge impact or a big enough impact where we're like, all right, yeah, I'm glad we got this guy? Because at first I thought, hell yeah, he will be. And now just, with his history and kind of looking more into his historical stats, it just feels like I've maybe overhyped him in my head a bit.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he has some overhyped name recognition. I mean, he had, one really good season with Buffalo where he had over 1,000 yards and like 9 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. But since then, I mean, his highs have been with the Chiefs, and that was like, not even 700 yards, and he only had, I think, 3 touchdowns that season. Mm-hmm. But I mean, like we've been talking about the last couple of years, without Devontae, this Packers offense is a win by committee. So we don't need him to be. First of all, we don't need him to be our number one receiver. But if he can,
we're playing Moneyball.
Yeah, no, seriously. Like if he can, if he finishes the season with 500 yards and 5 touchdowns, I think that's a win, because I think that's production we need from our wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. And if Allen Lazard can, kind of really solidify himself as the number one receiver, then we don't need Watkins to be a game breaker, but we just need him to show up when we need him.
And we need him to be an impact. We need him to be a threat more than anything, right? Like the statistics are the statistics, right? But like we don't have 2 guys covering Devontae anymore, right? We just don't. So everyone else on the field now is going to be more covered, right? And we need Sammy to draw some attention. We can't have him be a non-factor.
Well,
and you just said. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, more than anything, he needs to be healthy. Like, because if you can't use him as a decoy if he's sidelined with a hamstring injury.
Well, and all of a sudden, if we got Big Bob back and we got Sammy being healthy and relevant, now that all of a sudden opens up things for one of our rookies to step up. And according to Aaron, our likely number one receiver, Allen Lazard, needs to obviously have himself a big year to even come close to make up for what we lost this offseason. So let's switch over from injuries to just that, the guys that are healthy in the wide receiver group. What have you heard about Allen Lazard, who is our presumed number one receiver so far this mini camp? Yeah,
well, I mean, I think we've probably all heard the Aaron Rodgers interview, or the 2 interviews where he basically anointed Lazard as the number one wide receiver. Aaron Rodgers seems to have that expectation for him and thinks he can get there. Randall Cobb was interviewed yesterday, I think, or Friday, and he had this to say about Allen Lazard, which I thought was pretty interesting. He said that, he's noticed he's stepped up, taken a leadership role, and he's trending toward a level that we saw in 2010 from Jordy Nelson. Jordy Nelson obviously went on to be Rodgers' favorite target until Devontae Adams, ascended. But, you're talking about comparison to, an all-pro caliber wide receiver. So, I don't think we can ever assume that we're going to have Devontae Adams type talent on this team, for the foreseeable future. But if he can become a Jordy Nelson type of threat, I mean, that is huge. I'd be happy to have Jordy Nelson in his prime as our number one receiver again,
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, and Aaron saying that, I think everyone knows he's not one to coddle the truth, right? And he's kind of gone after his wide receiver room a little bit. So I mean, if any of those statements are even remotely true, then I love it. My only concern is he's not young. I mean, he's young. Of course he's young. He's in the NFL, but he had a very established role on this team, right? Being that almost receiver, tight end, blocking, person on this team. So not only does he need to step up from like a game catching and being the guy, but he's also changing his mindset and his game a bit, right? And how well can the team do that, and how well can he do that and be transition from essentially a blocker, right, to making up for what we lost in Devontae Adams. How many times can we say Devontae Adams in this first podcast, I wonder?
At least 10 more.
I feel like we're at 6 already. So, but yeah, no, I mean, obviously glowing words. It's only, 3 days of actual practice so far in training camp. And so far it sounds like he's taken a huge step up, but he's not been the number one receiver, I'd say, in headlines, has he?
No. So that was actually what I was going to ask you about next. So we've got 2, the Packers drafted 3 wide receivers this offseason, but the 2 that keep kind of coming up in conversation are Christian Watson, who we know is on the PUP right now and not practicing, but Romeo Doubs, who was drafted in the 4th or 5th round, I forget, but out of 4th, okay, out of Nevada, I believe. Not a big time school program by any means, but he seems to be turning heads. Aaron Rodgers has talked about it. Jair Alexander had mentioned it, like on the first or second day of camp, saying that he had a great catch and he's looks like the real deal. And Randall Cobb is also praised him so far and saying that he's got a high ceiling. So I think everyone right now at this point thinks that Christian Watson eventually will kind of become the best wide receiver in the room. But do we think that's going to happen, or do we think should we be more excited about Romeo Doubs than Christian Watson, or how do you feel about those two?
I feel like I choose to be excited about the positive news that is given to me, from Packers resources. So yes, I am still very optimistic and excited about Watson, but he just went through a surgery, is only, walking through a few drills. So of course I'm going to be super excited about Doubs and Dobbs or Dubs.
Man, I actually don't know.
I think Dobbs. I'm not sure, but we'll figure that out. But look at this. We don't even know how to pronounce his name, and everyone's talking about. I've read somewhere that he's made one significant catch in each of the 3 practices so far, which is a big deal when it's your first time, being in the NFL, going up against guys like Jair Alexander. So
that said, I don't mean
go ahead.
That said, no pads yet. This is helmets and shorts, right? So
and no games yet.
And no games.
Right?
We've seen these receivers shine in training camp in the past, and then no show when it comes to the regular season. So, are we getting too excited too early, or should we be excited? Should we allow ourselves to get our hopes up just to be dashed?
So that's what I'm going to say. I'm going to choose to be excited, because why not get excited about a 4th round pick that no one's really expecting much out of, or wasn't at least until 3 days ago. I choose to be excited, and if I get let down, great. I would love to be. I wouldn't love to be, but I'd be fine being let down this season by this kid. Now, if I'm let down by Lazard, and if all of a sudden I don't hear Amari Rodgers' name, anymore, and I'm let down by some of the guys that we're actually relying on, then that's a big deal. But a guy that had really, no expectations of even had his name pronounced on such a prestigious podcast like ours, I think we're allowed to be excited, and why not root for a kid that everyone is kind of overlooking. Yeah,
I'm with you. In my mind, I think the best case scenario is Romeo Doubs is really good or pretty good right away and gets better. And then maybe that allows Christian Watson some time to, get his feet under him, acclimate to the offense, and then kind of maybe he can elevate to a point that's eventually better than Doubs. But then you end up with 2 really good wide receivers. That's kind of best case scenario. But that's what I choose to believe is going to happen at this point.
Yeah. Yep. I completely agree. Besides him, and before we talk about, the guy that we all love talking about so much, particularly in the off season, are there any other players to watch in your mind, that you're either A, disappointed in, or B, excited for with the limited news that we've seen so far coming out of camp?
I think we've seen it the last 3 years, but I think I'm really excited for Rashawn Gary. He's somebody that we've been watching for years, obviously, but he seems to get to another level every subsequent season. So,
yes,
by all accounts, he's looking fierce in practice, and I am really excited to see what he can do. Especially with how Preston Smith played last year. If those two can, if Preston Smith can kind of stay at the same level he was last year, and Rashawn Gary can ratchet it up a notch, I'm excited to see our defense. And with the additions we made through the draft, I think our defensive line can be just formidable.
And those are the names that I'm drawing a blank on right now. The guys from Georgia, despite me drawing a blank on their names, those are my guys to watch, because to your point, even if Rashawn stays at the same level and Preston, even if he regresses a little bit and we get more help for guys like Kenny, to the guys from Georgia that I think you're looking up right now, that's, I think, a game changer. We've spent so long the last 10 years talking about Aaron Rodgers' one-man show, single-handedly getting this team to the playoffs. This is a freaking defense, man. And if we did our job in the first round of the draft this past year, and we got some players that can make immediate impact, or at least one of the two can make an immediate impact. And by the way, back to the beginning of this episode, Gutekunst has made some picks that have made some significant impacts very, very early, like Stokes, like Jair. And if he was right on just one of these guys, I think we're going to be a tough team to play against, this year. And I think those are the two guys to watch.